again. Will he stay or will he go as Rodgers begins to mull over his future? There's one thing he's certain about, that he can still be an MVP.
Do I still think I can play? Of course. Of course. Can I play at a high level? Yeah. The highest. I think I can win MVP again in the right situation. Right situation, is that Green Bay or is that somewhere else? I'm not sure. But I don't think you should shut down any, opportunity.
All right. Rob Gronkowski, who's won 4 Super Bowls, isn't sure why Rodgers is focused on individual accolades.
Why are you thinking MVP? Like, don't you want Super Bowls? Like, Super Bowls are I think, 5 times greater than an MVP award. Like, we all know that you won the MVP a few times now, but, everyone would know even more how many more Super Bowls you've won than MVPs.
Danielson, you agree with Gronk?
I think Gronk is misquoting Aaron Rodgers. First of all, the Packers, let's live in this hypothetical world where Aaron Rodgers decides to come back and the Packers want him. They're not going to play in the Super Bowl or be Super Bowl contenders unless he plays at a very high level. That is obviously a blanket statement for basically any team in the NFL. So if you watch the whole interview, okay, Aaron Rodgers basically in the same breath hits on 3 different things. Number 1, he says the team has to make a decision. Because in his own words, he says, well, the team could sit there and say, we want Jordan Love to be the guy, and we're going to move forward with Jordan Love. And then he goes, but if I still want to play and they want Jordan Love to then kind of take over as the quarterback, it's obviously going to be somewhere else. He didn't say he absolutely wants to play somewhere else. He said if the team decides that they're going to go with Jordan Love and he still wants to play, it has to be somewhere else. The second thing he says, again, in the same breath, talking about winning the MVP or playing at that level, he says, in his words, there's no point in coming back to play unless you think you can win it all. He literally says the very thing that everyone is crushing Aaron Rodgers about, saying, there's no point in me coming back unless I think I'm coming back to win the whole thing, and then says, okay, well, if I come back, I still think I can play at an MVP level. So you got to listen to the whole interview. He talks about it multiple times with McAfee, and the conversation is very much so the team's got to make a decision. I got to make a decision. I'm not going to come back and play football unless I can go win it all. He talks about teams that aren't in a situation to win it all. So if it's not in Green Bay, those aren't going to be on the conversation. And then he says, which is a very obvious thing to say, I still think I could play at an MVP level because those 2 things are connected. So I think we're making a lot out of nothing here.
Well, first off, Gronkowski's protecting Brady because Brady didn't win a lot of MVPs and he won all those titles, and Brady's his buddy. So I think part of it's that. I agree with Dan on that point. They can't win unless he does play like an MVP. So to me, one washes the other. Packers can't win a Super Bowl unless Rodgers plays great. Unless he plays on an MVP level, is he going to play so-so and they're going to win a Super Bowl? And I think that's what he was referring to, so I agree with Dan on that. The third thing I don't agree with Rodgers on, well, the Packers have to decide. No, they don't. Rodgers will decide. The Packers gave him $50 million a year last year. They gave him $150 million for 3 years. The Packers aren't going to play Jordan Love. I mean, you think they're going to sit there and let Rodgers trade him with the Jets and let Jordan Love be the quarterback when nobody in America knows if he's any good? Green Bay's not going to take that chance. They are going to if Rodgers made a huge stink about this, I want out of Green Bay, then they will deal with it. But they are not going to make a decision. This is not far of a few years ago. They are not going to make a decision of, you're right, we want Jordan Love to play rare and we'll trade you to the Jets, get a couple of draft picks. They're not going to do that. And Rodgers knows that. He's not stupid. Rodgers played well enough last year. So at the end of the day, Rodgers might be trying to plant a seed that there might be better alternatives for him. But I'd be very surprised if he's not in Green Bay next year. And I think he'll bounce back and play well. But they can't win the whole thing, Harry, unless he plays at, quote-unquote, that MVP level.
I would say this, though. Like, who cares if he wins the MVP in my eyes? Because we look at the 4 times he's won an MVP. In 2011, they went 15-1. They lost in the divisional round, right? In 2014, they went 12-4. They lost in the NFC Championship game to the Seattle Seahawks. In 2020, he won MVP. They lost to Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The following year, in 2021, who did they lose to? The 49ers in the divisional round. I understand that, we're talking about this MVP and this whole mantra and whatnot, and we did have this conversation on Fitz and Harry right there, 12 noon to 3 p.m. every single day. Little plug there, Molly. But here's my thing with Aaron Rodgers. The dark cloud over A-Rod is that everything is always so individualized with him, right? From blaming receivers to blaming people. Nothing is ever his fault. He's never taken accountability for the things that he's not doing well. And that's the problem that lies with me when it comes to A-Rod, is that he doesn't take the accountability, and on multiple occasions, he has individualized everything when it has come to him. He hasn't made it always about the team. Even though he mentioned he's not coming back unless they can win a Super Bowl, I'm never talking about MVPs more so than I am talking about Super Bowl rings.
That's a great point that you made, that the MVPs didn't equate to playoff success. I want to go back to something you said. I don't think this had anything to do with, when we're talking about Gronk, anything to do with Tom Brady at all. I think it's about what Harry's saying. He came from what? The Patriot way, majority of his career. It was always team. Like, you would see how Tom Brady would handle the media with everything. He always takes the blame himself. I think people are just frustrated because they're feeling like it's narcissistic behavior.
Who was Brady's coach in New England?
Bill Belichick.
As Bill Belichick, one of the great coaches in the history of football. And who has been Rodgers' coaches in Green Bay?
McCarthy
and Matt LaFleur.
Yeah.
Though they are not Bill Belichick. I mean, remember, LaFleur lost last year to San Francisco because he paid no attention to special teams.
Wait, are you defending him being bad in the playoffs, or you're defending like his interview behavior in terms of the narcissism?
It's easy for Gronk to sit there and say all he cares about is MVPs when Gronk's got Belichick as his head coach. All right? I mean, that's one of the great coaches in the history of pro football, and Rodgers is sitting there with Matt LaFleur, who's not a great head coach. He's not. Look what he did last year with his special teams in the San Francisco game. He paid no attention to it. He missed field goals. He had a punt block, and they lost the game.
They just won a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay, Gronk.
With Brady and Arians and everything else, I understand that. But he won most of his greatness was with Belichick in Tampa, Patriots with
So you're saying if Rodgers had that kind of coach?
He doesn't have the great coach. He doesn't have the great coach.
Can we get out of this notion that the Green Bay Packers don't want Aaron Rodgers? I think the last 2 years, the Green Bay Packers have shown that they want Aaron Rodgers. So why does he keep saying in all his interviews, if the team wants me? They've showed you the last 2 years that they wanted you.
Go ahead, Dan.
Again, I think the two big things here are this. Everyone keeps talking about this conversation that he had on McAfee's show in regards to that the only thing he said was, oh, it's me and I can win the MVP. He again, in the same breath talking about that, says he's not coming back unless you can win it all. So we got to stop only picking and choosing the ways that we want to attack Aaron Rodgers. Mad Dog, I want to push back on something that you said, because you said that Green Bay doesn't have a choice. Green Bay absolutely has a choice here. Yes, I think there's a reality of this. No matter what they think about Aaron Rodgers, the player, one, Jordan Love, who's their first-round pick, going into year 4, they really don't have any idea of what he is. And the second thing is the biggest part to me here. And I'll give Marcus Spears a shout-out for this, because I fought him all offseason about this, and I kind of concede that he was right, because he talked about Rodgers' lack of spending time in the spring with the receivers, and he kept using the word rapport. Yep. And I was thinking about, like, on-the-field timing and rhythm with the offense. And I think the reality is this. What happens if Aaron Rodgers is like, I want to play Green Bay, but I'm not coming back till middle of August? Like, you got to have, if Aaron Rodgers wants to play in Green Bay, I think it's fair for Green Bay to say, we want you, but I need your energy from April and May and June all the way. I need that energy because, Aaron, you're the standard setter. You carry the culture for all these young players. And I think Marcus had a point, and again, I didn't kind of listen to it, is like, Aaron, that offseason time when it comes to the connection did have an impact. And if Aaron wants to play, I think it's fair to Green Bay to say, all right, we want you and we love you, but you got to be here to carry the offseason for us energy-wise and leadership-wise. It can't just be show up and play in the season.
I'll buy that, but I disagree with you.
You think he wants to do that, though?
Well,
I don't know.
He wants to be practicing for Jeopardy. I understand. But the idea now that Jordan Love, remember, when Favre left, they had Rodgers. Okay, the idea that Jordan Love is going to pick up the train when Rodgers leaves, I'm not buying.
Don't forget, though, when they went from
You've been impressed with Jordan Love when you've watched him play? I have not. You've been impressed with him?
I think in spots he's had moments. He's had moments. I think it's very difficult to see. He was a talented player coming out of school. He hasn't played much. He's had moments against the Chiefs that were okay. He had moments against Philadelphia this year that were okay. I don't know, but I remember, because Aaron and I were the same draft class. I remember when they transferred over from Favre to Aaron. He played poorly in some moments. I remember in preseason, a scrimmage in Lambeau, people were saying, "Oh my gosh, we got to move on from this guy. He can't play at all." I remember that vividly. So Jordan Love is a great unknown more than he's going to stink.
If you're the GM of the Packers,
I want Aaron Rodgers.
You are going to sit there and you're going to say, you know what? We're going to deal Rodgers because we think he's, not as good as he was, and we're going to hitch our wagon to Jordan Love. I'm not doing that if I'm.
I want Rodgers.
If I'm the GM, when Rodgers can still play and Brady's at 46 playing as well as he is, I'm not doing that.
But
I'm going to ride Rodgers out as long as I can.
Are you doing that if Aaron Rodgers says, I'm not coming back to Green Bay till the second week of August?
See, that's the problem that I have. And Dan, you're bringing that up, and I think it's very meaningful that you bring it up because, number one, me and you have been in the locker room. We know how important it is for your star quarterback to be there with everybody.
Right.
And like you mentioned, Dan, it's not just the on-the-field stuff with the guys. It's getting to know Romeo Doubs as a person off the field. It's getting to know Christian Watson as an individual off the field. What makes these guys tick? What makes these guys go? If you're a two-time back-to-back MVP winner, you have to be around that facility. And I'm not saying you got to be there every single day. I'm not saying that. But you have to be around there enough for those guys to understand the way you're thinking and for you to understand them as individuals so you know how to move forward as a team.
I'll buy that. Rodgers can't show up in August. I'll buy that. That you guys are right.
Yeah.
I'll give you one, the both of you, for a change, especially you, Dan. But the idea that you're going to be the general manager